article we found on MLB.com. Anthony Castrovince put out something yesterday on the 31st. The title is How the Pitch Timer Can Help Player Health. Well, that's something that's coming in 2023. The pitch timer will be here. There's a lot of interesting things. The pitch timer. We're going to put out a segment about the entire rules here before spring training starts, and we're going to break down the rules so you can really understand the shift, the pitch clock, things like that. So stay tuned for that. We'll make sure you're all good on that one. But this article is interesting. First, it kind of starts off in discussing a former player, Brandon Geyer, and his entire sleep schedule process, how he likes to get 10 hours of sleep. Okay, interesting. But let's get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation. They talked about how sleep is, quote unquote, the secret sauce to the MLB or to professional sports. Okay, the reason they say that is because with the fact of this new pitch clock being implemented, what we saw in the minor leagues, there is an average of 25 minutes less per game, which is fantastic for pace of play. We saw the minor leagues that work great. I'm really excited to see what the pitch clock can do. 25 minutes could be something great, especially someone who watches so much baseball. I would love to get those extra 25 minutes back per game. It's going to really add up, especially with replays. I'm looking forward to that. However, this conversation kind of just talks about what if it's only important if they decide to use those extra minutes to actually sleep. And then they talks about certain studies saying that doesn't happen. It seems like it kind of goes a little all over the place. And unfortunately, Castrovince is a great writer for MLB.com, but I don't know if this is his strongest suit, but I think it has an interesting discussion for the pitch timer and how it can impact players' health for the pace. So what's your thoughts about this article? And let's kind of dig into this.
Oh man. Yeah. So when I first heard about the pitch clock coming out, I immediately went to the health of pitchers' arms. Having to go all and in today's game in particular, right, when it's max effort for as long as you can, which is always less than what starters or pitchers used to be able to do. So that was my first thought. And so when I saw the title, I was like, oh, really? The pitch timer can actually help, oh man. So yeah, the long and the short of it is that with 25 minutes to half an hour shaved off a game, players can sleep more. And then they went in to talk about how grueling the schedule is and that they need sleep and all of that stuff. So I'm not a fan. The pace of play thing to me is insane because for a number of reasons. But first of all, the games last so long. You notice they're not cutting out things like commercial breaks or anything like that, which extends the game far longer than me taking my time to throw a ball. Okay, let's get that out of the way. So games are that long because of the revenue that they generate. So that's the first issue. And then to tell me that the game is too long and boring now, well, okay, it's your own fault. But anyway, then they go in to talk about, players scheduling and getting in at obscene hours and trying to get your full 10 hours of sleep, which is the first time I've ever read anywhere that you need 10 hours of sleep to be at your maximum production. I have never heard that before in my life. Now, me personally, I'm lucky to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, right? Right. So 10 hours to me, that's like a whole weekend. I'd love to sleep a whole weekend. But anyway, the real issue I have is that it's a weak argument for their conclusion, right? And the better conclusion, if you are really worried about players' performances, and it mentions, by the end of the season, your strike zone awareness and things like that, you're fatigued. I get it. So things decline. How about this? How about the season isn't 162 games, right? If this is the issue, you can adjust scheduling and shorten the season if you're really concerned about players not getting their sleep, right? That, to me, is the biggest crock going. Like this whole, we need to make games shorter. No, you don't, because you're not doing anything that's going to take a penny away from you. You're going to adjust everything else and put it on players to sleep, put it on teams to provide them with the right pillows and the right beds and all of this stuff. It's weak. It's weak. And I'm kind of disappointed, right? Because this feels like a piece designed to make people okay with the changes that are coming. And that rubs me the wrong way as well. So I've got a lot of issues, and I'm trying to not be as blunt as I'd like to be.
You
But
seem super calm and in control. So that's nothing really here. I know there's a lot of things interesting about this article, I will say, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it does seem like it's kind of trying to persuade you to understand the rules a little bit. But you talk about injuries, and he makes the argument in this conversation as well about how the minor leagues, they did adopt the pitch clock, and a lot of the people were worried about the pitchers' injuries. The injuries actually decreased 11% according to this article from 21 to 22. That's only a 1 year subject, 1 year piece, 11%. So I'm interested to see if it does it again. If we get a 2-year sample of decreased injuries, or it stays around the same because we already have a decrease, then maybe the pitch clock has impacted a decrease in pitcher health. That is interesting to me. That would be very interesting. And if that's the case, obviously comes into pace of play and players' health. Pace of play is also interesting. You talk about ads, commercials. Mike Trout. You talk about Mike Trout because we've seen him injured so many times. The average game right now is 3 hours and 5 minutes. They compared him to, as everybody does, Mickey Mantle. When Mickey Mantle was playing, the average 9-inning game took 2.5 hours. Where's that extra half hour coming from? From commercials. The radio, they talked about those commercials when they were putting the guys out on the field. So I absolutely agree with you. There's a lot of things that you can unpack here. However, I think the pitch clock is going to change pace of play a little bit. I think that we're not going to see an average game of 3 hours and 5 minutes. I think we are going to get closer down to 2:45, maybe even closer to 2:30. And that might help younger fans get into it a little more. I'm not sure. However, I consider myself a traditionalist with baseball. I've tried to for the longest time. I tried to push off the fact of having a universal DH. Now I'm okay with it. I live with it. Although I miss the double switch and miss some of that strategy sometimes, I'm okay with it. It worked out. With this coming into the pace of play and adding, I still can't do robot umps yet. That's still going to take a long time for me. But with the pitch clock, things like that, hey, if this lowers the pace of play, okay, fine. But I'm starting to agree with you about the shortened season. As much as I didn't want to lose 162 games, but if you move it down to 150, how many times in other sports do we hear fans say, "Oh, I don't care about the regular season. It's pointless. I just wait to the playoffs." You hear it all the time in NBA. You hear it all the time in the NFL. And it's the exact same in MLB, especially now with the expanded playoffs. Now you have 7 from each division. The half of the season is, honestly, just a complete brush. If you move it from 162 down to 140 or 150, I guarantee you, other than the few older fans, which right now that's your average, you still have to gain your younger crowd a little bit, will not be that hurt, but they'll get over it. So yeah, if you're looking at trying to worry about players' health, which you're not, you're worried about your capital, you would worry your pace of play. That's why they're not switching that 162 games, Shaun. Interesting though, really interesting article. A nice little thing to start off the rules here, because we're going to really dig into these new rules. What's your thoughts?
Just one more thing I wanted to add, like if Major League Baseball is, and like you, I think I would maybe consider myself a traditionalist when it comes to baseball, but because I think baseball is a beautiful game and you leave it alone. You have something that's beautiful, you leave it. But I also understand that times are changing and whatnot, so that's fine. But if you're saying that this is for our younger fans and all of that stuff, you're not. You know what's going to get your younger fans' attention? Jazz Chisholm.
Yes.
That's what's going to get your young fans' attention. You market the shit out of him, and everybody like him. All those players, all the young, exciting talent that now I'm really angry that teams are making a fortune off of, making the league minimum while they're raking in millions. So those are the guys. That's how you're going to get young fans. Show how exciting they are. Show them having fun. Like the All-Star game. During that home run derby, at first I was like, get off the field. What are you doing? You're not part of the tournament or whatever. But now I'm like, look at them. They're enjoying life. They're loving the game of baseball. That's what's going to get young fans buying shirts and jerseys and tickets and $20 beers.